right, let's start with Harris topping Trump in favorability ratings and also in the latest polls.
This is an entirely different race than it was just a week ago. And one thing is for certain, it is close. We've had 4 major polls come out just since Joe Biden left the race and endorsed Harris. You have anything from a Harris +2 to a Trump +3, basically a tied race, all within the margin of error. We've also gotten some initial battleground state polling that's encouraging for Democrats. A tie in Pennsylvania. Trump up by just a single point in Wisconsin. That's better than Joe Biden was doing in both of those states. He was trailing in the 538 polling average right before he left the race. And it has been quite a honeymoon for Vice President Harris. Just in the space of a week. So a week ago, 35% of the country saw her favorably. Now it is up to 43. That includes a big jump among independents. She is now the very rare politician viewed more favorably than unfavorably, at least for the moment. On the other side, we've seen kind of the opposite happen for Donald Trump. Coming out of his convention and that assassination attempt. We talked last week. He had got to a 4-year high in favorability of 40%. Now it's down to the mid-30s, back where it's been for a long time. And J.D. Vance, this has not been a good debut week for him. The number of people who view him unfavorably jumped by 8 points in the space of a week. Look at that gap, 15 points underwater overall, Robin.
And overall, Rick, it does appear that with the voters, that they're more pleased with this current matchup than they were with the rematch with Biden and Trump.
Yeah, we've seen a big shift in that, Robin. Just a week ago, 14% of the country said they were unfavorably inclined to support either one of the candidates. They were.
J.D. Vance and Ron DeSantis are cut from the same cloth. It's the Sugar Man cloth. And it's so funny that that is like supposed to be the future of the Republican Party, which is like a technocratic approach to Donald Trump's policy agenda, which is basically just like post hoc pieced together after Donald Trump says something, not realizing that like Donald Trump carries his base in a cult-like fashion, and it's not actually the sound policy making that is the reason why people like him. And it's a complete misread from the Republican Party. This is something that I've mentioned a bunch of times. Republicans don't realize that their agenda is just genuinely reprehensible and that people don't like it if you're just like a nerdy guy who is like being nerdy about your racism or being nerdy about your sexism. Like a little bit of like racism and sexism obviously plays well to the base, right? But you can't go beyond. You can't just like deliver detailed analysis in the form of scientific racism to try to justify your belief system, right? And I think that they are leaning into that because it's a genuine misread. I think that they just like bought Twitter. Elon bought Twitter, and they just thought that they could like manipulate people into thinking this way. They thought that, you know, they were genuinely popular, not realizing that like all of the policies that they've pushed for are not necessarily things that people are desperately demanding. Like their base of support is not desperately demanding that you, I don't know, fucking dunk on a bunch of like random trans teenagers. Like most people just don't give a shit. You know what I mean? That's not like that's not a real thing that people are like desperate for, you know? Like even in the Republican Party, no one is like, oh yeah, I can't wait for penis inspection day in schools, dog. Like I love that shit. That's weird. That's just gross. Why the fuck do you care about this so much? And I think that they're just going to keep doing that, even though that exact mentality led to a awful, disastrous 2022 midterm outcome for them. And honestly, like the fact that the Republicans or the fact that the Trump campaign thinking that they were going to still run against Joe Biden went with like an easy base pick with J.D. Vance, even though it was like just an awful choice overall, is a clear-cut indication that they are too far gone and too lost in the sauce to change course, change trajectory, change their messaging. I've said this before. I've said this time and time again. I said this in 2022. I said this on multiple different occasions for the past couple of years now, that the Republicans personally forgot how to run in a post-Trump world. They forgot how to run like good campaigns. They forgot how to appeal to normal people, and have mistaken their own success in state legislatures for genuine popular momentum and broad support for some of their most violent policy agendas. And it's really weird. They're just getting really fucking weird with it. David Sachs, Elon Musk, and Tucker Carlson, with the exception of Tucker Carlson, listening to David Sachs, Elon Musk, and Donald Trump Jr. is the dumbest fucking thing you can do. I'll find the clips where you 100% said if the Republicans lean on this trans hate, they're going to come across weird to the average voter. Yeah, a compilation of your locks. Imagine if Metal Gear Solid 3 looked like that. Look at this fucking socialist wearing a... Okay, these are silly locks. These aren't like... I don't think these aren't like political things that I've mentioned. Anyway, it looks like they didn't pick JD to win the election, but the lockdown and MAGA future, none of the reasons listed were to help win Ohio. Yeah, but you don't understand. There is no fucking MAGA future with JD Vance either. Okay? I think the only real reason for JD Vance was he's the bag man, as someone in the chat also correctly pointed out. Do you see what I'm saying? Like, he brings in tech bro support. He brings in the big bag, a big old bag from a lot of right-wing VC funded, VC backed Silicon Valley weirdos and losers. Okay? And that's it. Like, and I think it was dumb. And even Bergen would have been better, honestly. But yeah, the fucking MAGA supporters or weird narrative is solid. Like, it's because they are, and they should be called weird. Because like when you present them as like a genuine threat to American democracy, you're giving them, I mean, it's not untrue, but you're giving them too much credit, and that actually plays solidly to their base. But if you actually humiliate them, you cut away on that narrative a little bit that they're big, strong, scary guys, because they can always run on that and be like, oh, they're just afraid because we're going to do great things for America and we're going to be owning the libs. But when they're the ones getting fucking owned for being humiliated on the timeline and being humiliated in general, all of a sudden, some of the normies see that and they're like, I don't know if I want to be responding to this. Like, I don't want to be associated with this shit, which is something that I've done for years and years. I mean, this is a big principle. This is why I do Hogwatch. You feel me? Like, I love that I love that these guys are letting their fucking freak flags fly on the timeline and being associated with this image that they're fucking insane, because they objectively are. Okay? Look at that. Like, 4G Auto Blow is legitimately like a gross, weird person. Okay? Like, the Republican Party used to uphold this image of like elitism and all this shit. And now they got dudes with face tats. That image is edited. Bro, he does have a Trump blow up though. I don't know if is that actually edited? He literally does have a Trump blow up doll. And he also does look that way. Like, that part is not edited at all. So you feel that this is a bit reminiscent of how liberals behave towards conservatives in 2016, that it might backfire? No. In 2016, liberals behaved towards conservatives as not as though they were like weird and gross freaks, but instead that they were like I mean, they were right, by the way. Liberals consistently talked about how, Trump would be awful, and they talked about Trump quite a bit, to a degree that gave him a lot of play, but Donald Trump had no track record that you could point to. And Donald Trump was significantly more moderate on a lot of issues in 2016. Liberals cared about the decorum and how uncivil the Republicans were. The Republican Party at that point was still, the last time the Republican had ran in that situation was fucking Mitt Romney. A Mitt Romney to Donald Trump swap out was obviously genuinely changing the trajectory of the Republican Party, but people still thought about the Republicans as like, there was still enough people in the base, the normal Republicans that live in the fucking suburbs and shit, that thought the Republican Party was the old Republican Party. They were still gross, violent weirdos overall, but they hadn't gotten this gross in front of a broader audience. And also, Trump did not have the disadvantage of having run and successfully won the presidency and been the president for 4 fucking years. Everybody knows what it's like to live under a Trump administration. People don't like the way that they felt under the Trump administration. Okay? Maybe some people have like rose-colored glasses in the way that they look back at that. There's always like a nostalgia component. Maybe they remember the stimmies that they got, right? Some people definitely remember the stimmies that they got, and the stimmies were good. It's never bad, right? It's never fucking bad to give money to people. People love that shit. Biden is live. Is he? Is he alive? Where is he live from, dude? Oh, he's in Austin? Damn, I should have stayed. I should have stuck around to see the GOAT in action. I mean, it's going to be boring as fuck. I don't really care about President Biden delivering remarks and commemorates the 60th anniversary of the Civil Rights Act. Like, I don't really care what he has to say there. But in any case, let's continue on with this.
Where you call them the double haters. Now that number is cut in half. And check this out. The enthusiasm gap that Democrats have worried about, at least for now, entirely erased. Democrats enthusiastic about Kamala Harris's candidacy, just like Republicans are for Trump. And this is a striking number. 49% of independents say they are enthusiastic about Kamala Harris. Compare that number to Trump's, and you see how this race has been turned on its head, Robin.
All right, Rick, our thanks to you.
Here in the U.S., there are new signs of strength for the Kamala Harris presidential campaign, including new poll numbers and a growing financial haul. Meanwhile, former President Donald Trump is turning up the heat on her with a series of personal attacks. Nancy Cordes is at the White House. Nancy, tell us more.
Good morning, Michelle. The Harris campaign says it brought in $200 million in the first week of her candidacy. That is a record. It's also touting more than 170,000 new volunteers. Now, the campaign says that this is a sign of pent-up interest in the race as the party converges around a new message about the Republican nominees, arguing they're weird.
Are you actually excited about Kamala? What is this, brother? I'm just giving you what is going on. I'm giving you what the actual battlefield looks like. Okay? As far as Kamala Harris goes, I have my reservations. I've talked quite a bit about what I think she could possibly do that would fuck up the bag that she currently has. Okay? I'm offering you analysis on what, and I'm telling you what is going on the ground, and I'm telling you what my potential picks are, my potential predictions are. Okay? And a lot of what I've told you was 100% correct. I told you that a lot of the double haters just hated how old Biden was, that the Democratic Party's platform across the board wasn't the issue. It was actually who was saying it that was the issue. And I showed you at the time the poll numbers for down ballot Democrat senators, okay, outperforming Joe Biden by 10 points in some of these key fucking states. I told you this over and over again. Just like I told you for years that Biden is too old, he would be a one-term president, and that was ridiculous to drop the incumbents advantage and many of the other complications that come with having a really old president. And yet, since 2019, I've been fucking saying this, and nobody wanted to listen to me. I'm glad that the Democratic Party got together and got their shit in order and actually did something smart for once, did something competent for once. Okay?
Vice President Kamala Harris has seen a notable increase in her favorability rating among Americans, according to an ABC News poll released on Sunday. Shortly after President Joe Biden withdrew from the presidential race and endorsed her, Harris's favorability rating now stands at 43% with a 42% unfavorability rating. Based on the latest ABC News poll, just a week ago, Kamala Harris had an approval rating of only 35% and a disapproval rating of 46%. Since Biden's announcement on July 20 that he would not seek re-election, Harris has garnered endorsements from prominent Democrats, including former President Barack Obama, and has actively campaigned. ABC News reports that Harris has already secured commitments from enough delegates to potentially become the presumptive nominee, pending their voting commitments. This surge in favorability has been particularly pronounced among independents, a crucial group in American politics.
But in terms of my own personal opinion on Kamala Harris, like I said, I need to see more. Obviously, she is still very much responsible for a lot of the actions of the current administration from where I'm standing, especially in terms of like what's going on in Gaza. Okay. And I need to see a a change in not only messaging, but like actual action from her on that front. I am a firm believer that Americans don't necessarily give a shit about foreign policy. Okay. And I think Trump recognizes that, or rather, Americans not only don't give a shit about foreign policy, but Americans also are more pro peace and like less war than we give them credit for. As long as war is happening and like they don't have to think about it, they're fine with it. They don't give a shit. But like pro peace, my ass. No, dude, you don't understand. When people are campaigning, think about how Trump campaigns. Think about how Trump successfully campaigned in 2016. He literally tried and successfully, in my opinion, outflanked Hillary Clinton as a warmonger. Understand that I don't believe Trump is a dove, okay? I'm saying on the messaging front, Trump presented a better message on how he was going to end wars and stop wars, and how Hillary Clinton had been a formative figure in America getting into all these fucking wars. People forgot this for some goddamn reason. You mean he made it seem like she was a warmonger? No, she was a warmonger. And Trump put that in full display. But think about that. What does that represent? What does that mean? What does that mean in terms of she is a warmonger? She is a war hawk. Okay? Americans, in terms of the aesthetics, Americans are significantly more open-minded to a pro-peace message than a pro-war message. Okay? Donald Trump is currently running on no new wars happened under my presidency. Look at how many wars happened under Joe Biden. Now, luckily for the Democratic Party's prospects at this upcoming election, a lot of that stink is not on Kamala Harris. Okay? This is a massive W for the Democrats. They should lean on that and change trajectory, both on the narrative front and maybe even get some fucking solid wins. If some kind of commitment to a ceasefire, which Israel is never going to play ball, obviously, but if some kind of fucking commitment to a ceasefire and an actual ceasefire happens before this upcoming election, that would play phenomenally well for the Democratic Party. Okay? In terms of my own personal opinion on the matter, I think we need to see much more than just like a commitment to a ceasefire. But the reason why I talk about Trump's messaging is that even though Trump is not a fucking dove by any means whatsoever, and his actions in office prove that reality, he still presents himself as that. Why? Because Americans are open-minded to that, okay? Even if it's just for the aesthetics. And Democrats, whenever they fucking talk about NATO or talk about how many military bases we have, they are only talking to a handful of voters that care about the military-industrial complex. They're not talking to the broader Americans. Because if you were to ask, if you were to straight up ask average Americans, like, would you rather have 800 military bases all around the planet or free healthcare? I think that the majority of Americans, possibly by like overwhelming majority margins, would say, no, I want healthcare and I want education. I want infrastructure instead of having 800 military bases. Let's have 400 military bases and then have the other shit. You know, the only way that Israel could potentially do a ceasefire is if America says we're cutting aid until you fucking do the ceasefire. That's it. And the reality is because Americans don't give a fuck about foreign policy overall and have a tendency to at least respond positively to a less wars, please narrative, even when it's coming from psychopathic neocons like the Republican Party, who will then turn around and be like, yeah, we need to not go to war with Russia so we can go to war with China, which is fucking insane. Democrats lean into that and try to outflank them on the war hawk narrative. And also, simultaneously, they look like they're responsible for so many wars. They take ownership over it. That's not a good idea at all. It's a bad idea. I swear the staffers that watch you are the ones that convince Harris to run with the conservatives a weird narrative because you've been saying that shit for years, Lamau. I mean, maybe they just kind of arrived at that on their own. I don't know. I was talking to my normie friends this weekend, some of which are the classic, like middle of the ground, don't pay attention to shit. And they fucking hate JD Vance. They objectively, like legitimately right-wing adjacent people, center right to right-wing adjacent people, heard the JD Vance cat ladies quote and were like disgusted by it. Okay? They heard that and were like, that's so ridiculous. It's so gross. So I'm telling you, they're going along with very, very weird vibes, and they're becoming normie repellent, more so than even 2022 somehow. They're scaring the hoes. You can't do this like sweaty groiper 4chan shit, okay? Because in broad daylight in public, things are very different. When you're on the main stage, things are very different. I'll give you an example from my life, right? People clip shit out of context all the time. People talk about how fucking soy I am all the time, right? But if I'm like standing next to a normal human being, there's a difference there. You can't actually cut that narrative. It cuts across that narrative. What people can see in the real world is very different than what plays well online. Online, you can make the sweatiest, fucking weirdest, grossest arguments, especially if you tap into the right algorithm. It will present you with a false reality, and it will cause you to think that your advocacy is actually more popular than it really is to the median voter. Anyway, my right-wing adjacent friends are so obsessed with trans people, Twitter has literally broken them. Yeah. Huh.
We are going to win.
Vice President Kamala Harris didn't just rake in campaign cash this weekend. She also experienced a polling surge. In a new ABC News Ipsos poll, her favorability rating rose to 43%, up from 35% just a week ago. Among independents, it shot up 16 points, as her opponent, Donald Trump, saw his drop by 8.
She has no clue. She's evil.
Trump tested out a series of new personal attacks this weekend.
I'm running against a low IQ individual.
Kamala Harris is deadly destructive.
It's so funny that he's running with this when like the Republican Party, like establishment Republicans who are psychos themselves, like Mike Johnson, for example, recognize that that is not a smart play. Mike Johnson immediately was like, yo, cut this DEI shit out. Stop calling her a slut. Stop calling her fucking low IQ. You guys this is not a smart play. But they can't stop themselves. That's the one instinct they have. Okay? Is she a scary attorney general who loves locking black men and women in prison? Who is like clever and devilish and very radical? Or is she a dumb phony? Is she a dum-dum who doesn't deserve her position of power at all and was a DEI pick? These things, like, you have to figure out at least one of those two angles. They try to do this with Joe Biden too. They would be like, Joe Biden is so old, he doesn't know his ass from his elbow. And then when he would pop off and have like a unique moment where he could, deliver like an uninterrupted message, they would turn around and go, look at how evil and scary he is. And you can't do both. Which one is it? Is he actually a clever devil, or is he a fucking dumbass? It's crazy.
Destruction of America's borders is completely and totally disqualifying for her to be president.
Harris had this response at a fundraiser in Massachusetts.
And you may have noticed Donald Trump has been resorting to some wild lies about my record, and some of what he and his running mate are saying, well, it's just plain weird.
She got some backup from potential running mates.
If he wants to see a bum, he ought to look in the mirror.
Who held events on her behalf around the country.
We're not afraid of weird people.
Dude, I love that he's like trying to look younger. He's trying to look younger. You see that? Yeah, his biggest weakness is that he appears much older than he actually is. This is classic fascism, though. They need their enemies to be weak because power equals good, but they also need them to be scary and all-powerful because the threat needs to be real. No, I know. My enemy's both weak and strong. I know. But, like, narratively in the moment, it just, like, doesn't make sense. You got to lean on to, like, whichever one is the more successful strategy. And because they don't have, like, an adequate line of attack against Kamala Harris, they haven't been able to figure out which side they want to lean on. And worst of all, they just keep saying over and over again, that like Kamala Harris is fucking dumbass and she's a DEI hire, she's a whore, she's a childless woman, all this psycho shit. And that's not good narrative. At a certain point, like with respect to Donald Trump, that's what the Democrats did too. They keyed in on his own personality over and over again. A little too much, right? They just kept leaning into Trump's personality. That's what Hillary Clinton did. Wait, saying weird doesn't mean you're saying you're weak? No. What?
No. We're a little bit creeped out, but we're not afraid.
They also went after Trump for this unusual plea he made to Christian conservatives.
Christians, get out and vote just this time.
This one was crazy. This bar, we got to cover this extensively, okay? I'm going to cover this extensively. He went on a Turning Point Action, he went on Turning Point Action and just fucking banged, okay?
Just this time. You won't have to do it anymore. 4 more years, you know what? It'll be fixed. It'll be fine. You won't have to vote anymore, my beautiful Christians.
The Harris campaign said he
Like, what the fuck do you mean, bro?
was signaling an end to democracy.
Like, what does that even mean? Why did you say that? Even when I saw that, I was like, what the fuck? Is he all right? Like, is his brain all right? What the fuck is going on? He also said, I'm not Christian. Yeah, that part is like, I think he said, I'm a Christian, but it sounded like he said, I'm not Christian. That, like, you're not going to get a lot of play there. I think, like, Republicans are not going to hear him saying, I'm not Christian. Okay? It doesn't make sense. Why the fuck would he say that anyway? Why would he say, I'm not Christian? Maybe at most it's a Freudian slip, you know?
Republicans weren't sure what he meant.
I think he was just trying to make a hyperbolic point that it can be fixed as long as he gets back into office and all that.
I think he's obviously making a joke about how bad things have been under Joe Biden.
Trump's running mate, Ohio Senator J.D. Vance, gave this.
Yeah, no, you guys are doing great. Great way to defend those statements. It's like, that is a completely nutty ass thing to say, okay?
Explanation to CBS News.
So I think he's saying, get out there, make sure this election matters, because if you don't, the next 4 years, we may not have a real election if the Democrats give illegal aliens the right to vote.
What?
It's important to note that Democrats have not suggested that undocumented migrants should get the right to vote anytime in the next 4 years. Democrats went after Vance all weekend, actually, for his past claim that childless cat ladies run the Democratic Party. And even some Republicans said privately that they're worried his comments will further erode Trump's support among women. Michelle?
It's so funny to be like, oh, it's just a joke. Oh, we're just joking. And then the Republicans are like leaning into that. I genuinely feel like this is how some leftists and how some rad fems, rad libs in general are like, when Republicans would be like, you guys are hysterical, blue-haired, joy killers, woke scolds in general. You don't want to have any fun. You don't want to have anybody have any fun whatsoever. And then some people will hear that and be like, no, that is literally me. I think that the best way to possibly moralize everything, the best way to show how fucking real I am and how committed I am to my own personal political ideology is to show you how much I fucking despise normal people having fun and like wear that on your fucking sleeve. It's something that I obviously hate and have spent the past 5 years of my professional career ripping into the leftover, right? And because I think it just plays really poorly. Like, nobody gives a shit. The only thing people have are their fucking treats. So why are you trying to take people's treats away? Okay? It's just dumb. And that is basically what the Republicans are doing on the other side. Okay? They're annoying. They're fucking loud. And they're really, more importantly than anything else, gross. Okay? They're gross. They're sweaty. They're really fucking sweaty. And they love moralizing about their own worldview, about how, like, you have to abide by their standards. I think that is something that Americans broadly do not respond positively to. Okay? They don't. They think it's fucking odd. The whole point of this entire project is that you get treats and you get them cheap. Okay? We just kind of we kind of drown ourselves in commodity consumption. It's a big part of this project. We're the largest consumer engine on the planet. Okay? We want treats and we want them cheap. So when you're constantly fucking chirping about all this other shit and you're constantly being like, no, cat ladies are not having enough babies and we got to fucking restore the baby making machine that is the modern American, whatever. Like, if you say shit like that, they're going to be like, what the fuck are you saying? And that's the thing. Republicans have completely fucking leaned into that. Like, no, we are actually Christo-fascist weird dictators. I don't know why. Okay. But that is precisely what they're running on right now. And it's very odd. They're leaning into it more and more. The more people are calling them fucking weird, the more they lean into the weirdness. Doors unlocked. Doesn't J.D. Vance calling Kamala childless for raising her husband's child just alienate every adoptive foster parent? Yes. There was a really good, here, we'll watch the tone shift and then we'll talk about, there was a Trey Gowdy introduction that was like blistering.
It is still a bit early to rely on polls for any definitive understanding of how the race has shifted, but the current polls do give us the direction in which people are moving. Democratic Party leaders and donors made a calculated decision by pushing Joe Biden out of the 2024 presidential race, betting that Kamala Harris would be a stronger candidate against Republican nominee Donald Trump. Early polling indicates that this gamble may be paying off, with Harris outperforming Biden in surveys taken since she stepped in, even leading Trump in some of them. The key question among strategists in Washington from both parties is whether Harris's surge is genuine, and if so, whether it will endure. In a civics tracking poll last week, Trump went from leading Biden 46% to 44% to losing to Harris 48% to 46%. A July 23 Reuters poll mirrored that finding, with Harris leading Trump 44% to 42%. Late last week, the Wall Street Journal showed Harris and Trump effectively tied, something Atlas Intel also found.
Democrats are now embracing some weird messaging when it comes to the Trump campaign, and we mean that literally. As Politico puts it, allies of Kamala Harris are shifting their characterization of the Republican presidential ticket from being a threat to democracy to just plain weird. Take a listen.
The thing that these guys hate, by the way, is obviously being like humiliated. They hate that the most. And they also hate the spotlight, right? What does a 4chan poll loser hate more than anything else? Behaving in extremely online ways in broad fucking daylight. Okay? They might actually foster a lot and garner a lot of attention and a lot of support in their own hug boxes. And they might lead them to thinking that they have a lot of momentum, right? But it's just like that story of the dude who called on 4chan for the assassination of the fucking cop in Florida, okay? It's just like David DePipe. It's just like a litany of these archetypes that are just constantly, permanently online, zero sunlight, neck bearded, living in the mother's basement, and constantly fucking chirping, and have like a bunch of different like Groyper accounts, you know, Himmler's Tit 1488 and the like. And while they get 60,000 likes on Twitter, even the average Republican, when they see that guy, go, ew, you're fucking gross. And oddly enough, the Republicans like have leaned into that guy, thinking that that guy is the median voter.
Listen to the guy. He's talking about Hannibal Lecter and shocking sharks and just whatever crazy thing pops into his mind. That is weird behavior. And I don't think you call it anything else.
I think Donald Trump, I know him, and he's probably sitting and watching the TV. And every day, it comes out, Vance has done something more extreme, more weird, more erratic.
It's not just a weird style that he brings. It's that this leads to weird policies.
You may have noticed Donald Trump has been resorting to some wild lies about my record, and some of what he and his running mate are saying, well, it's just plain weird.
Joining me now, Theron Johnson, former Southern Regional Director for Obama's 2012 campaign and a Democratic strategist. Susan Del Percio is a Republican strategist and MSNBC political analyst. Okay, Theron, what's with the weird?
Well, I'll tell you this, Chris. You're right. A lot of surrogates, the vice president herself has chosen to use this word. And I think it's a good way to describe the former president. Now, one thing that I know for sure, there are probably 10 other words that they want to use that could describe the former president. But weird seems to have a sort of tone to it and it's sticking. It's many Democrats believe that there are unorthodox things about Donald Trump before he even ran for president. But we remember.
Dude, can you imagine how fucking stupid the Democratic Party's strategy prior to this was? Which was, we need a strong Republican Party. Why can't we have a strong Republican Party? As though there is any such reality where there was a strong Republican Party, or that it would be a good thing to have a strong Republican Party. Like, think about how fucking stupid they were for so long. Like, it just fucking, oh my God, I cannot. It's just.
How he ran early on to destroy the Republican Party. Yes, he won in 2016. And there were a lot of weird things that he said while he was president in his 4 years. And so it's got to be something that the polling data shows resonates not only with Democrats, but it also resonates with working class Americans. And this is what this race is going to come down to, is that working class Americans of all races have got to figure out who they want to vote for in this race. And I believe that Kamala Harris and her team and the surrogates are honing in on this message, because I will challenge any Republican to have a debate with me or any other Democratic strategist, and we can write down at least 25 things that the former president has either said or done that can be classified as weird. But that's not ultimately what the campaign is going to focus on for the duration, but it is something now that I think that is resonating with the base and those working class Americans.
I think, Susan, that Theron used an interesting word, which is tone, right? Something we know that voters, particularly those middle voters, have talked about. They talked about it 4 years ago. They're talking about it now. Let's hear, conversely, some of the things Donald Trump has said.
She was a bum 3 weeks ago. She was a bum.
A bum.
A failed vice president and a failed administration. So now we have a new candidate to defeat the most incompetent, unpopular, and far-left vice president in American history.
She's a radical left lunatic. She has no clue. She has no clue. She's evil.
Evil, lunatic, incompetent, bum, as opposed to weird. Does that speak to those voters who, frankly, are exhausted by the level of vitriol in politics today?
Well, Donald Trump sounds plain old bonkers. I'm going to add that as one of the words we can use in addition to weird. And the problem for Donald Trump is the campaign may have adjusted to a Harris candidacy, but Donald Trump hasn't. He hasn't figured out what to say about her. He keeps trying these lines, and they're not going to work, Chris, because at this point, he's got to go for the middle. That's where the fight is. And he's not going to get, especially independent women in the suburbs, with that kind of language.
I mean, you talked about this again, Theron, as, being part of the tone. I don't think it's necessarily a coincidence that many Democrats were using that same word at the same time. But honestly, what do you think it buys Democrats? What does it buy the campaign, and for how long?
Well, it reminds Democrats that we cannot underestimate a Trump candidacy. I'm not saying that we took him for granted in 2016, but there were many people, including myself, that thought that Hillary Clinton was going to win that race. And so we learned from our mistake. We saw 4 years of him doing the name calls. I mean, what you just showed, Chris, is only a snapshot into what the former president has said about not just Vice President Harris, but other women who he has attacked along the way. And so, again, it's a phased approach. It's driving up momentum. It's a very sort of politically correct way to describe the former president's behavior. And I think you'll hear more harsh words used to describe him as the campaign goes on, and definitely at the convention. But again, I go back to what my colleague just said. We know that the goal here is 270 electoral votes. Her choice for vice president by August 7th will play an added role into that. But ultimately, there's got to be data that shows how do you motivate the base, but more importantly, what are those moderate, independent independent voters, those working class Americans of all races want to hear about this man and just compare the two. You can say a lot of things about Vice President Kamala Harris. Yes, they're going to talk about how she laughs and they're going to talk about her being a woman. The sexism will be on Front Street going forward. But ultimately, I think that the American people is looking forward to the future. And who's the best person to continue what Joe Biden has done for this country and make it even better going forward?
Yeah, one of the interesting things I think in this campaign is how memes that people on the right used, they thought to attack Harris, actually have been sort of adopted, especially by a lot of younger voters, which we know they can be unpredictable, right? So she seems to be changing her social media narrative. Let me play for you a TikTok that just went out.
Hey, Kamala, what are we going to say to Donald Trump in November?
Bye, bye, bye.
Melissa Ryan, who's worked in digital strategy for progressive campaigns for Democrats, told NBC, this is a reversal of what I saw in 2016 when it felt like Trump had just taken over.
I hate it. I hate this. It's so fucking cringe. Don't do this shit. Like, be serious, man. Be serious. Be fucking serious. Be serious. Be serious. Don't run this fucking 2016 ass like Hillary Clinton. Look at all the fucking liberal elites. They're all on board with us shit. Please just fucking run a normal campaign. Oh my God. Everybody remembers the Pokemon go to the polls. Like, what are we doing? Be fucking serious. Don't try to lean into the memes too much. Just let it happen organically. Oh my God, dude. I think Americans want like normal, competent leadership more than we care to admit. Maybe I'm wrong, but I don't think that the Democrats should be like, look at how many fucking Hollywood celebrities love us and like we're hanging out with them. Just be like, listen, I'm running for president, okay? I'm not running to fucking win daytime Emmys like Donald Trump. I'm the motherfucking president going forward, okay? What you should do in that circumstance is you'd be like, here are the things I want to do. Here are the things they want to take away from you. Here are the things I'm going to defend. And here are the things I want to do. Just be like, look, they're weird and they're constantly talking about culture war shit. And they don't actually care about putting money on the fucking table. Okay. Putting food on the table, putting money in your pockets. You feel me? Like, Americans care about not seeing the top of the hour ad break. They want to have more disposable income so they can use it at the Hasanabi broadcast. That's what Americans give a shit about. You feel me? At the top of the hour, there's a 3-minute ad break, and Americans are like, God damn it, dude, I don't want to see that. Hot take, that TikTok was cringe in a good way. No. Anyway, here's the 3-minute ad break now. You can also get gifted a sub if you're lucky.
Over the internet. In 2024, who wins the...
I disagree. Kamala's already seen as a fun auntie. This just solidifies that. I don't think it's going to affect her. That TikTok wasn't for you. It was for the younger audience. What? You think younger... No. That TikTok is the most millennial coded TikTok of all time. The fuck are you talking about? You're so unimaginably wrong, dude. I know you're trying to call me old here, but that's crazy. What the fuck? Bro said Gen Z, and then they fucking showed In Sync. The younger audiences are, the less they give a shit about voting. That's number one. And number two, the younger the audiences are, the more fucking clued in they are on like marketing. When something smells wrong, they hate it. It comes across as cringe and inauthentic. And I think that ad and ads like that, just like the Hillary Clinton campaign of 2016, had a lot of cringe and inauthentic moments that I think really grossed people out, beyond the fact that, like, obviously Hillary Clinton was seen as a demon for good reason.
The internet, how important is it?
Well, who wins it in a positive way is Vice President Harris. She's going to keep out there with her message. And it should stand out that she's nearly 20 years his junior. So when we talk about the future, younger people, seeing Donald Trump on TikTok just really doesn't work. So,
but also, there in some of these, I think there's a question of who's having fun. And it seems like...
Wrong. Donald Trump is an organic content creator. Many people don't know this.
A week ago, the US presidential election seemed to be heading towards a predictable outcome. Donald Trump's supporters confidently anticipated a decisive victory during a Republican National Convention that resembled a coronation for a nominee who had survived an assassination attempt and pledged to unite the country. Meanwhile, Democrats, feeling desperate and disheartened, feared the worst as their nominee, Joe Biden, clung to his party's nomination. However, in the past 7 days, the 2024 presidential race has undergone a dramatic transformation. With just 99 days until Election Day, a fundamentally new contest is emerging, featuring fresh candidates, a shift in key issues, and a renewed outlook for both parties. Vice President Kamala Harris stepped in for Biden last Sunday, quickly breaking fundraising records, dominating social media, and generating a level of enthusiasm that some Democrats say mirrors the excitement surrounding Barack Obama's historic candidacy nearly 2 decades ago. This is potentially Obama on steroids, said Representative Jasmine, who was among 40,000 participants on a Black Woman for Harris call last week. If you found this video informative, then make sure to hit the like button and subscribe to this channel for more videos like this, and thanks for watching.